Good day everyone, so I'm going to make you a Windtrace expert, so let's just get into it. So if you're a rebel, there are a couple of things you need to consider. The first one is what type of map do you have currently, and as you can see here, we've got a map that seems to have a lot of elevation, but it doesn't really have it effectively. So your best strategy is actually to stick as a prop and be on the rooftop. So you want to see the hunter there in the background, and in particular you want to see him use his skill. So if he uses his skill and he starts coming towards you, you can then very slowly maneuver out of it and even jump from rooftop to rooftop. So it's a very tricky game to sort of play. In a different kind of map like the Ayaka estate, you've got a bit more verticality here, and again this is a very fine sort of balance between using your props and using sort of the environment to outmaneuver your enemies. But what I really love about this map is if you follow the strategy I'm about to do here, then you've got essentially a lot of options. So the big thing is you obviously want to disguise yourself as the smallest prop, and you want to be in a position that is difficult for the hunter to spot you from the ground. And what's so cool about this position is there are only two ways up to get up to this roof. It's either from the left or from the right. So there you can see the hunter is now coming from the left, and I just literally slipped down. I know he's on top on the roof, and I'm just going to be very careful with my movements here, and I'm just going to try and see if we can't outmaneuver him as a prop. And there we go, boom, now we got into a safe corner here because he's already checked this corner earlier in the map. Right, and the last type of map that you want to like work with as a rebel is like these foresty maps, which is really cool. So you either want to hide really high or really low, and you don't want to be a prop, because props are just dead giveaways in maps like these. Now look very carefully as I'm running. Notice if you can see something or if you can't see something. Look how the trees on your left and your right like obscure vision. That's like a really good thing, because what you can now do is you can hide at an elevation. And by hiding at an elevation, someone running around on the ground is not immediately going to look up at you. And this has a couple of extra advantages as well. So depending on what sort of Q ability the hunter is configured, if he's got the one that reveals your location, then you, by being at the top, will actually effectively sort of hide that location beam, because the beam only goes upwards, it doesn't go downwards, which is really cool. And remember, you've got to understand this from the perspective of someone chasing you. It is very difficult for them to see you from the ground, and hence you can get an easy victory. So try and consider these things. Now, from a hunter's perspective, the biggest thing that you want to do as a hunter is always go to the middle of the map and then activate your ability. This means the range of possibilities is a lot smaller. As you can see, I'm just sort of testing the waters, testing some very classical spots. There we go, and I've got, just by pure luck, two of them. Very nice. Now let's go into a bit more of a more complicated game. As you can see here, I want to check for corners, because I know people are going to hide at corners, and then once they're at corners, I want to have the rooftop advantage. So don't run around, always try and get the high ground, whether you're a hunter or a rebel, and try and see if you can't see anything or anyone moving. Remember, it's just as important that the rebels don't have a visual sight of you. And then once you go do that, you go again back to the middle of the map, and you start looking at obvious places, alleys, corners. If anything here I would have been looking at. And then lastly, let's see, I saw that there might have been a direction here, but of course a time can always like pass, so we might be out. So I'm just like quickly scouring again, trying to take that high ground, trying to see if there's anything that's like out of sight. So again, we're going to quickly try and get that rooftop advantage all the way up, because at this point the rebel could have moved very easily. So I'm just sort of checking for some last minute movements, anything again out of the ordinary on this map. It's always useful to have the high ground advantage, just trying to look at the edges of the map, and then again in the middle of the map, and then I can very easily see that he hasn't really moved his position, and therefore it is now easy game over, because you just narrowed down the possibilities.